Rubber band, band, rubber band, band. Do, 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 do. I watch you, I get you moving, just moving. Got him grooving on the corner. It's burning up, y'all. Whoa, 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 hey y'all, hey yourself. Oh, here's my man. Never heard a sound. No, when the rubber band starts to jam. Yeah, 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 yeah. Boy, that rubber band man's a doozy. Who's so quick, Lord, he'll make you lose it. And then he stuck your shoulder out. You wiggle it up, you wiggle it down. Got his feet to moving. That rubber band off the ground. He lifted it way high at the sky, y'all. And then he all get with it, y'all. Hey, y'all, prepare yourself for the rubber band. Man, what's you say? Oh, whoa. When the rubber band starts to jam. A rubber band man. How much of this stuff do we think we can stand? So much rhythm, grace, and debonair from one man? No. And then he had the nerve to twiddle his left toe, but through his knee, got the feeling in his head, y'all. Oh, come on, baby.
The One Academy is the heart of our company. Cryptocurrency is not an easy product. It's a very innovative product based on technology and based on very, very complex concepts. For us to be part of this financial revolution, to be part of cryptocurrency and of a community, we need to understand exactly what we do and what we talk about. And this is why we have the One Academy. The One Academy provides you with concepts, provides you with explanation on cryptocurrency and on the financial world. I would encourage everybody to join the courses, to do the certificates, and to understand thoroughly how to use cryptocurrency, what cryptocurrency is, and how we can change the world by using cryptocurrency. One Academy. Learn today, lead tomorrow.
Fantastic evening to you, all OneAcademites listening to the sound of my voice. My name is Lisa Green, and I am your presenter for this evening. Now, we have a very special program for you tonight because we're going to be talking about the world of accounting, investing, and different things that relate to our everyday financial lives. And it is so important for us today, or in this time, to take advantage of all of the different opportunities that we have to create our financial wealth. And one of the things that One Academy helps us to do is to have that financial education to take us into the future. And our future is all about the technology and the blockchain, etc. But tonight's guest, he is going to take us into the accounting world and teach us all about taxation, investing, as I said, and it's about life. It's about everyday activities that you do on a daily basis that impacts your life. So if you didn't see that that message we put out today, so we said, like, if you are between like 20 and 30 years of age, and you're not looking at the circles in terms of your friends who you are acquainting with, and they're not talking about opening a business, especially in this COVID time, or investing, especially now that you have the cryptocurrency market increasing and moving at such a rapid pace, then you need to find additional friends that will take you where you want to go in the time that you need to go there. And you know, they say it's usually about 3 to 5 years. And if you look at your friend circle and you see that acumen going on in your friend circle, you know, you want to achieve those things as well. So it's all about self development, and we're going to help you with that tonight in this session. So, tonight's guest that we have for you is a gentleman who some of you may know very well, and he is Mr. Donny Shaw, and he is the owner of D. Shaw and Associates. And if you're looking at the page right now, this is an awesome view of serenity, relaxation, and we all want to get to that place in our lives where we have no worries about what's coming next. It's just about being comfortable in where you are and the space you are at. So Disha Associates offers a range of products, and they practice taxation, accounting, and different other business and administrative duties for their clients. So if you think that you can gain from this, go ahead and share the link and get your friends involved in this program tonight, because Mr. Shah has the experience, and that's like over 20 years of experience of accounting in the distribution, manufacturing, retailing, construction, food, and beverage, as well as the hospitality and recycling sectors. So he comes focused and ready to provide us with high quality services and to speak about those services. So get your pens and papers out, because we're going to have a discussion with Mr. Donny Shaw. And I'd like to introduce him to come to the mic so that he can share with us his insights into this world that we call life through the taxation, accounting, business, and those administrative things that we need to do on a daily basis. So, Mr. Shaw, are you here?
Um, Hi, good night, everyone. It is
Oh,
so
that's
good to
not Mr.
see.
Shaw.
It is so good to see so many people, but having some difficulty to get
Okay.
on,
Oh, okay.
right? So we are trying. We are trying. I know that he had another meeting earlier, and he was trying to see how best he could fit us in. So it apparently went on a little too long. But what we will do, thank you so much again, Lisa, for taking up the hosting position for this OneAcademy Nights. And yes, we are entering a very, um, very awesome topic tonight. And that is one, of course, of reading financial statements. If you were with us for the past couple of weeks, we touched on many things. We touched on the banking sector, and all, of course, coming from our OneAcademy manuals. We touched on the banking sector. We touched on mortgages in the banking sector. We touched on savings and investments. And we also touched on Forex trading and the many different aspects of the Forex. We also had someone from the UTC come and speak to us, of course, about stocks, different companies and whatnot. And what we want to do is just continue along that trend and literally give you what you need to make a very educated decision about investing into a company. And no one can really do that investing into a company unless they understand and are able to read some of the key things in a balance sheet, in the financials of that company, to see if that company is worthwhile in investing. And so that is very, very important. Of course, we have in the OneAcademy manual on page 46 of the part 2 of the level 1. And it says, Lisa, could I get to share my screen, please?
Sure, no problem. Just I've stopped sharing, so go ahead.
All right, thank you. Right, so that part 2 of the level 1 really gives you an insight into explaining the nature of financial statements and what we should pay attention to. And many times, this is where this could actually make or break your decision in investing. If you make the wrong choice in the companies that you invest or the stocks that you invest into, it could literally wipe you out. So again, the OneAcademy and Dr. Ruja thought it necessary for us to understand the very basics of reading a financial statement. Robert Kiyosaki, of course, is very, very adamant that we should have a personal financial statement, to give us the score, our credit score, and how we are doing financially. And he always says that the bank doesn't care if you're a doctor, if you're a farmer, or anything like that. It doesn't care about that secular, that sort of what you may have as certificates or, recognition or anything like that. What it cares about is literally what you look like on your balance sheets, what you look like on your financials. That is your credit and your scorecard for the bankers or for any financial institution. So having said that, what we wanted to do today was actually bring on a very qualified accountant. And he is also on the Deal Shaker. He has some deals on the Deal Shaker. We find that they are very, very efficient and effective in what they do. They work very quickly. And we were speaking to them for the past couple of weeks, I suppose, coming down to the end of the year, last year. And we found that they are very keen on really providing service and top-notch service at that. So it is no better person that I found to bring on to deal with this situation because, again, of the experience and because of the experience that we had with them in doing business. All right. It is so unfortunate that he had some other situation that came up. I know he was trying, so I'll keep switching between to see if he came on, right? But in the meantime, what I would do is really give you a synopsis and play 2 videos, right? If he comes on, we would just, of course, invite him in and let him do what he does best. So what I'll do, Liz and the panel, I see that we have, of course, the usual panelists. We have Miriam Lizama, Noel, Emmanuel Jack, Wayne Wilson, Edwin Wilson, and we have Mr. Alvin Morton. And I think Alvin Morton is a very good one to really come into this discussion, having himself some accounting experience. All right, so we will just start. I'll share my screen and play the first video for you.
Rich doesn't know age. That's the most important thing. I don't agree with Jack Ma at all. Age has nothing to do with when you get rich or poor. Many people didn't become rich until later in life. That's the one thing good about capitalism. You can wait till you're later in life. You look at Colonel Sanders. Colonel Sanders became a multimillionaire at 70. So it's never too late to be an entrepreneur. Rich doesn't know age. That's the most important thing. Why do I like Ferraris? It's because I look better in a Ferrari than Toyota. But the point here is this: a lot of people say live below your means. Who wants to live below their means? I want to live the best life I can possibly live. If I want to buy a new Ferrari, I first buy an asset, and the asset pays for the Ferrari. I wanted a Rolls Royce. Why? Because I never had a Rolls Royce. I've had Bentleys. So I built an asset, and the asset then bought my Rolls Royce. Now I'm kind of bored with cars. So I don't have a guilty thing, is that I have financial education. I think pensions are for losers. They're so terrified of making mistakes. They want a steady paycheck, and they want a guaranteed pension. I don't think you can get rich from that point of view. Capitalists use other people's labor and other people's money to get rich. Which side do you want to be on? I'd rather be on the capitalist side. This is all it's about. It's about a financial statement. income statement, balance sheet, statement of cash flow. Accounting is the most important subject for individuals because this is what your banker wants to see. Your banker wants to see your financial statement. This is your report card when you leave school. If you have good financial statement, bankers will give you all the money you want.
So you see what Robert Kiyosaki says, and he speaks a lot about having that cash flow statement, having your balance sheets, having that financial statement available at all times. Because if you see something that you really want to be a part of and you have to get any credit, having those statements can make or break that deal. So again, he emphasizes the need for us. And there's no reason why we shouldn't, as individuals, understand simple accounting, jargon, simple accounting methods, because housewives do it all the time. Housewives balance their husband's checkbook, they balance the family economy, and they have a simplified way of doing things. What we want to get the individuals involved in is actually doing it a particular way that accountants and institutions could really understand. And they will really get impressed if you walk into any institution and say, these are my financials, and you have it printed, you have it in a nice format, and you have it available so that anytime they ask you, you are prepared. And we want to add that value tonight. Of course, this is the first of many other installments that we will have along this line. If Mr. Shah can make it tonight, maybe he can make it next week or the week after. But it is very, very crucial and vital for us to have something like this all the time. I would play another video and then we will just enter into a discussion. If Alvin Morton doesn't mind, we would engage and have discussions around the three elements, which is the balance sheet, the cash flow, and also the income statement. So let me just dive in a little deeper into these three different aspects.
An important part of analysing a company for a potential investment is understanding their past, current, and potential future financial situation. Unfortunately, a lot of investors skip past this part and focus just on the products and services the company offers and whether they feel that they have a good future or not. And we're not even talking about Wall Street bets YOLO type investors either. We're talking about everyday investors who take unnecessary risks by not looking into the financial health of the companies they're investing in. The most common reason for this is that they don't understand the financial statements. And that's quite understandable because they're full of numbers, strangely worded items, and can seem a bit confusing or complicated. But in reality, they really aren't so complicated at all and are nothing to be afraid of. In fact, once you know the basics, it can actually be quite interesting to dive into the financial statements of a company and analyze how the company's being run and any potential opportunities or threats that there may be. There are a number of different ways to analyze the financial statements, but before you get to that stage, you need to know how to read them so you know what it is that you're looking at. In this video, we'll go through the basics of a financial statement and explain the key sections so you can see how straightforward it really is. Now, as I'm sure you can see from the length of this video, we're not going to go into detail about absolutely everything, but we're just going to go through the main sections so you can get a good understanding. And in any case, most of the items, once you understand how these statements work, are pretty self-explanatory. They're actually labeled and you can figure out what it is that they're showing you. As an example for this video, we'll be looking at the latest quarterly results from Tesla. Now, it's important to note that financial statements may differ slightly depending on the company or the industry or the country they report in. However, for US listed companies like Tesla, the financial statements would be included in the 10K and 10Q filings, which are mandatory for all publicly traded companies in the US by the SEC. The 10K is an annual statement and the 10Q is quarterly. The 10K will provide more information about the company and it is audited, so the information you see in it will be more dependable and more accurate. But let's take a look at what Tesla provided in its most recent report, which was for the first quarter of 2020. The financial statements of a company are usually made up of three main statements. We have the balance sheet, the income statement, and the cash flow statement. The balance sheet is typically the first statement to appear, and it gives a snapshot of the company's assets, liabilities, and shareholders' equity at a specific point in time. These three aspects make up what is known as the balance sheet equation, also known as the accounting equation. This states that assets are equal to liabilities and equity. The balance sheet is split into 5 sections: current assets, non-current assets, also known as long-term assets, current liabilities, non-current liabilities, also known as long-term liabilities, and equity, which is also known as shareholders' equity or shareholders' funds. Let's start by looking at the assets. These will be listed in order of how liquid they are, which means how easily they can be changed or converted into cash. So, current assets are assets that are expected to be either used or sold within the next year. This will include things such as cash, cash equivalents, money owed by customers, inventory, and goods and services that have been paid for but not yet used. The non-current assets are assets that are not expected to be sold or used within the next year. Tesla includes things such as lease vehicles and solar energy systems, but there are also more common items also listed, such as property, plant and equipment, along with leases, intangible, in other words, non-physical assets, and goodwill. The next section shows the liabilities. Again, we have current liabilities, which are the obligations that are due within the next year. And this includes things like money owed to suppliers, even money that has been paid but the good or service is yet to be delivered, along with the portion of long-term debt that's due to be repaid this year. Then we have the non-current liabilities, which are obviously obligations that are not due within the next year. This includes long-term debt, and again, money that's received but the good or service has not yet been delivered. The last section is equity, which is often referred to as shareholders' equity or shareholders' funds. You could think of this as being whatever would be left over for shareholders if all assets were liquidated and all liabilities were paid off. Therefore, if the figure is positive, it means the company has enough assets to cover its liabilities. And if it's negative, it means that it doesn't. Shareholders' equity will include information about shares that were issued, any capital paid in by shareholders paying for shares in the company, and retained earnings, which is money accumulated from the company's earnings and kept in the company. The next financial statement is the income statement. This is also known by other names, including Statement of Operations and Profit and Loss Statement, amongst many others. This statement is going to show us the earnings and expenses of a company over a specific period of time. This is important to keep in mind. The balance sheet was a snapshot at a particular point in time, whereas the income statement is looking at what happened over a specific period of time. So the income statement is helping us to see a company's financial performance for that period. Companies will structure the income statement differently, but listed companies like Tesla will typically follow what we refer to as a multi-step income statement, which separates the operating revenue and expenses from those coming from non-operating activity. So we're looking at gross profit, operating income or loss, the income or loss before taxes, and then the income or loss after taxes. To get to the gross profit, we'd typically look at total revenue minus the cost of that revenue. So traditionally here you'll have sales revenue, and in the costs you may have heard of the term cost of goods sold. So this gives us the gross profit. We can then look at operating expenses, things like research and development for creating new products, selling, general and administrative expenses, which are all the costs not directly involved in production of a product or service, but needed for the day-to-day business operations. This will include things such as rent, salaries for executives and other management expenses, admin staff, and basically any non-salespeople. So ultimately, we end up with our income or loss from operations. We can then look at any interest paid or received to find our income or loss before taxes, and then finally, the income or loss after taxes. The third of the three major parts of a financial statement is the cash flow statement. So the income statement that we just looked at may show us the profit or loss generated during a period, but that doesn't necessarily equal cash. A company will need cash to survive, so the cash flow statement is going to help us by giving information about a company's liquidity and solvency. Solvency means having enough funds or liquid assets to make necessary debt payments and fund the company's operations. If the company runs out of cash, it could be insolvent, which is one of the main reasons for businesses failing. The cash flow statement will tell us the amount of cash or cash equivalents coming into the company or leaving the company, therefore showing us how much cash is on hand for a company to make its necessary payments. The cash flow statement is usually split into three main sections: cash from operations, cash from investing activities, and cash from financing activities. The first section shows us the cash flow from the primary revenue generating activities of a company. So this includes the company's products or services, things like cash from sales, rent payments, salary payments, and so on. Cash flows from current assets and current liabilities. Next are the cash flows from investing activities. The focus here is on acquiring or getting rid of long-term assets. This will show us outflows due to investments made in things like property and inflows when assets are sold. However, this statement doesn't detail the investments, and so the quality of those investments can't really be assessed. And finally, we have the cash flow from financing activities, which shows us cash coming in or going out due to any equity capital or borrowings. It tracks cash flow between the company, its owners, creditors, and lenders, including stockholders. So there you have it. Simple, wasn't it? Those are the main sections of the three main statements that make up a company's financial statements: the balance sheet, the income statement, and the cash flow statement. Now, we didn't go into lots and lots of detail. This was a high-level overview, but just by understanding those main sections and how the statements are laid out and how they relate to each other and the jobs that they do, you can already get a good grasp of what's going on in a company, and you should now be able to read a company's financial statement and understand what you're seeing. I'd recommend downloading the financial statements of companies from different industries and seeing how they differ from one another and whether you can read them now and get a better understanding of what's going on in those specific companies. And if you like this video and want to see more on this topic, such as how we can take this a step further and use ratios to analyze the financial statements, then hit that thumbs up button to let us know. And if you're looking for something to watch next, why not check out our Legends of Investment?
Okay, so for a short video, they did more or less touch on many aspects of the financial statement. And of course, one of the most, and I think the biggest part of that financial statement, of course, is that income statement that literally gives you that ratio if a company is solvent or insolvent. A company could have many things, but without cash, it really cannot operate. And that's why it is very important to understand the income statement. So Mr. Shah has not appeared as yet. he has been more or less kept back in his other meetings. So I would just encourage the panelists to have a discussion. I would like to start with, of course, Mr. Alvin Morton. I see you are there, sir. I haven't seen you for a while. It is so delightful to see you on such an occasion. So yes, so let's take a look, of course, Alvin, from your perspective of having financials be a part of our everyday speech, that we could look at a financial and probably talk to someone about it. Let me hear your take on it, please.
Sure. Pleasant evening, pleasant morning, pleasant night, wherever you may be joining us in the world on this session. Yes, Ivan, I have been a bit snowed under for the last few weeks. And I think today and probably tomorrow, I've just begun to emerge from the snow. So that hopefully explains my seeming absence. So only today in my current day job, we received audited financial statements and for 2020. And it was an unqualified audit. So you can have qualified audits, you can have unqualified audits. The unqualified audits are the better ones to have because it means that based on the sample size, if my recollection is correct, of transactions that the auditing company did, they found no internal control issues that would have a negative effect on the operations of the company. And by operations, we mean its income generating capability or the management and control of its expenses. So this is one of the first things that I wanted to point out. It is important to have because if you're going to financial institutions, if you're participating in tender processes, which I do a lot of, and was the reason why I was so absent for the last few weeks, one of the things that is requested is audited statements, typically for 3 years. This is both a plus and a minus. In the case of established entities, the financial statements and audited ones, you would have them because the business has been in operation for a period of time. Where it is a challenge, and in one of the sessions that was held a few weeks ago, where developmental finance is required, financial statements would be a challenge, in which case management accounts would be the documentation that is looked at. And a very simple way to look at that, it would be to take a look at Robert Kiyosaki's material, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Cash Flow Quadrant, and so on, where you get a nice explanation of assets, liabilities, and how cash flow fits into that. So he would show you the statements for someone who is challenged, who gets income, spends it on a depreciating asset, and therefore ends up with a liability. Of course, the income that he's spending faces all the taxation, all right? And this is why he would advocate forming a corporation where you can shield some of that income from taxation. And I'm sure when Mr. Shah comes on, if that happens, he would go into some more detail on that. And then it impacts your cash flow. One of the ways to, of course, raise your income would be to look at things like insurance and some of the tax incentives that are available to maximize. And we know some of them when we're talking at the personal income tax level now. And I can talk a bit about this because I do my own income tax returns and have been doing so for many years. My father taught me how to do it. He himself was an accountant in the days when you had to go to England to study ACCA. And there are things in the taxation regime has changed a lot over the years. It's become more simple, but there are things that you can do, whether it is deeds of covenant, or some of the solar-powered components where fiscal incentives are being offered, taxation incentives are being offered to push behavior, to drive behavior. And these are just some of the things. We can talk a lot about this. We can talk all night. I don't wish to take up all of the speaking time, but this is a key language to have. There's a discussion that you can have around assets, especially depreciating assets, and there's some decisions that have to be made in facilities management, for instance, and you're replacing an asset. You want to talk about useful life, you want to talk about end of life, you want to talk about maintainability. For those of us that own vehicles that are depreciating assets, you have difficult choices that have to be made, such as an asset that is aging like a car, and because of the change in technology, you may have difficulty getting parts for those vehicles. And some of these kinds of things have to receive and be brought under accounting treatment. There's some decisions that have to be made there in terms of sources of supply. And we could go into the 5 forces model. There are a lot of directions that we can go in. At the end of one of the videos that was shown, he started to talk about ratios. And so the one ratio that always stood out for me was what was called the current ratio, which is current assets divided by current liability. And that gives a measure of how well the entity can manage its current liabilities that are due within a year using its current assets for which income is expected during the year. And part of current assets, of course, would be things like receivables, inventory, and so on. Then there's the quick ratio, which is current assets minus stock and receivables divided by current liabilities. It's an extreme measure, it's a harsh measure, but it's really intended to determine how resilient that entity is if it is stressed by constraints on its receivables, which is money owed to the entity, accounts receivables, as well as inventory, how quickly it can turn over its inventory into cash. So those persons who are responsible for managing those areas would then, in the case of inventory, would have to talk about the inventory turnover ratio. How often is that inventory turning? Is there slow-moving stock? Is there dead stock? And to the extent of those two components, we then have a challenge that can then result in a loss being taken to the income statement, because those assets may not be saleable. They may have to be disposed of. Then there's the safety component surrounding that. So there's a cost attached to that. And of course, if your income, if the profit from the gross profit is not what it should be, typically it should be 35% depending on the industry, then you are not adding to your retained earnings, which is taken into the balance sheet now and contributes to shareholders' equity. That then is not growing as quickly as it should. And for those of us in the OneAcademy, it is from there that shareholder dividends are declared and paid. And so when we talk about paying in money to buy shares, we want to have that type of eye and analysis or assessment, to pick out and pick up some of those components. So I want to pause at this stage, Ivan, and return and yield control back to you to have someone else make pertinent comments. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Alvin. I am so sorry that Mr. Shah isn't here. I know this would have been a fantastic session. And and you went into many aspects, of course, of financial statements, stress tests, and all the relevant things that we need to know as investors, because what the OneAcademy is geared to do is not give you the information alone, but allow you to really utilize that information in everyday life. Every day you come across, of course, opportunities with different companies. Every day you also are asked to invest into maybe things that a friend may start, or some person acquaintance may approach you. And the first thing that you should really do is ask, do you have any financials? That is the first step. Not just because they say this is a good thing that you would want to invest, but does it have a history? Does it have continuity? All these questions should be asked, and a lot of them really would be answered by looking at the financials if a company has one, and really deciphering for yourself that, listen, this is a good investment. Many times we also want to get involved and buy stock from companies on stock exchanges. And many times we just more or less wing it. So we see a company XY may be doing so and so, but we never ask really to give us those financials for us to make that sort of analysis, as you say, Alvin. And I know we could go on and on with this because it is a very large topic. It is very big, but this here will be the first of many that will really give us the tools needed to make a really educated decision on our own, that we don't have to really go to someone professional. Yes, maybe for a second opinion, like you would look at it and say, hey, this is looking good, but let me get a second opinion, but you already do everything in your mind. And I think it's about time that we empower ourselves. Not only Warren Buffett or Charlie Munger or these guys should be able to look at a statement at first glance and say, this is not a good company to deal with. I remember Alvin, Robert Kiyosaki, when he was speaking about his rich dad, and his rich dad was teaching him how to read financials. And he looked at the company, I think it was either Robert Kiyosaki looked at the financials, right? Or his dad looked at the financials and said that the guy was ripping him off. And it was just merely to us like a glimpse, but he could have seen that something is not right with the financial. Money was being siphoned somewhere else. So that is the sort of skill that we should have as future investors. Don't you agree? I think so. So, we had a very particular incident that happened today, and I'll let Michelle wanted to actually mention it. It was very striking. Michelle, are you online?
Yes, good night, everyone. I can't open my camera tonight. I apologize. One of the things before I share the experience, it's just an observation. It wasn't really an experience. It is really an observation. And Robert Kiyosaki would have alluded to it in some of these statements or questions he just asked. Before I go on though, just now you were saying about the tools that OneAcademy, that what we would like to provide is about applying, is about allowing people to be able to make proper decisions. Well, Alvin just said it. He said it what empowered him. In fact, he has become very skillful, I would think, if he's doing his taxes for all his life, because of information that he would have learned from his father. And he didn't have to, go to someone. Yes, he may ask advice or he may learn something else, but it will add. And that's exactly what OneAcademy does. It's a great tool because the very topic we are discussing, the first thing you were able to do is highlight what is said in OneAcademy. So I want to highlight that. With regards to the observation, I noticed today a specific company right in Trin City. And what happened is when we were driving out of, not Trin City, where is this? Where the gas station is in, is Macoya, the gas station on the highway in Macoya. And what happened is we went into a company and we were driving back out. And to my surprise, I seriously thought it was like 100 and more young gentlemen walking out of a company because they were all in the t-shirts and they had the company logo on them, and they are walking to the direction of the bus route because they are all heading home. And they are the workers. And to my surprise, driving out in a new PDZ Benz, you saw the owner, driving out with it. Whereas everybody else, the people at, say, like the workers, head in the other direction. Why it's so uncanny is because I just heard it with Robert Kiyosaki. The statement he made, I think is the third statement. If you could just remind me what he said, the exact words he said. I don't want to say it wrong, but we sometimes have to get information that could take us out of certain situations. And, it was so ironic. And I got upset because I could be driving at PDC. and you know what? And it's the Benz, and you see it, and all the other workers head into the priority. And we take pride in this. My point is, let's change our mindset. We are getting information, we are getting empowerment, and we can act and make better decisions. And Ivan, you said it right. What if when I go to a financial planner, or I go to the bank and I pull out my own personal financial statement? Wouldn't that be an army of people different in this community and in Trinidad, where we are all prepared? I believe OneAcademy, OneForex, everything can provide that, where we think differently.
Yeah, thank you so much. And it's so ironic that you say you got upset because you weren't driving in the Benz, but no, it is just so ironic to see the amount of people going the opposite direction on foot, and one person going one direction with a type of vehicle. And again, I was making a joke, that is not a car, that is a driving machine. And, so there's a difference in, they are making his dream, of course, come true. And we have to look at things for what it is. Yes, we all work. Yes, we like, of course, a 9 to 5 or 8 to 4 job, because it keeps the bills paid, it keeps food on the table. But there's so much more that you can really appreciate and you could accomplish with the right financial education, and also the ability to do. And that is key, because we have given a lot of information over the past 3 or 4 years on the OneAcademy. And what it is, you have to make it relevant, you have to make it your own, and you have to literally implement the strategies of the OneAcademy. It will work for you. So, Alvin, in this time of COVID, how important is it for us to literally do financial education 1, and especially this type where we go and we deep dive into the investment strata of really the financial environment?
Wow, it's an excellent question. It's a great question. And in my humble view, there isn't a short answer to it, other than to say it is perhaps now become as important as breathing air. The financial education, Robert Kiyosaki talks about living at his means, or living the best life possible. Other persons will tell you, well, initially you should live below your means in order to generate the liquidity, so to speak, so that you can eventually live at the lifestyle that you wish. And there are others who will take you in along the road of understanding your mind and the power of the mind and the subconscious and so on. All of those things are important. But I would say that the financial education is key. Why is it key? And why now? Certainly because we have seen what one virus can do, and one virus that the scientific community doesn't know about. I personally, in my day job, had to participate in conversations with people, telling them about going on to half pay and accessing whatever arrangements were in place from the government to cover the other half. But when that went away and the business models of many of the clients changed, some people still ended up and remained for a period of time on and in a half-pay scenario. What do you do when that happens? Are you or have you looked at, or will you be looking at things such as Forex trading? And there are various variants of it. This is financial education. And it's unfortunate that we may have to start in a place where you're not able to creep before you walk. Some cases we may actually have to make some real steps before. But this is what one virus can do. It wasn't a very long time ago when something like Bitcoin, for instance, was 3,000, 4,000 US. It is now over 50,000 US, less than 4 years later. There are other cryptocurrencies, this particular one that is part of the One Life ecosystem, a couple of years ago was single digits. It is now close to 43 euros. So financial education allows you to identify these things. And if you're going to live below your means, it should be with the intention of putting capital towards getting some of these currencies. Because these things are going to become even more expensive as institutional investors now, being uncomfortable with the 1.5 trillion and all the different trillions of stimuli plans that have been put in place and will continue to be put in place, because nobody wants to confront the realities of a recession. In our own country of Trinidad and Tobago, we have been in deficit financing mode for quite, if not nearly a decade, quite a number of years, and that's not going to stop anytime soon. What happens if and when you, others, lose 100% of our income? What happens? Will credit cards be the solution? We saw something with the banks when they gave this moratorium, and it looked and sounded good until you got an email towards the end of last year that said that you have to consider making a payment for something called deferred interest. If you had no savings in place, because we will need to keep some sort of fiat currency to treat with instances and matters when or where digital means are not yet either legal or acceptable or both. If you have no savings in place, what are you going to do? The other option that you had was to accept a larger installment come whenever your loan was due in 2021, if it was supposed to be paid after 2022 or 2023. Because of the information that I have received and that I have immersed myself in through the OneAcademy and elsewhere, I was able to recognize that, look, I don't need any increases at this stage in my loan payments. It makes more sense to part with the fiat currency, which is losing value anyway, on the basis of what printing of money or simply adding zeros to a digital account does. And for those of us who want to know more about that, look at the US labor statistics, look at what has happened with the US dollar since the Federal Reserve was instituted in 1913. It made more sense to part with those fiat currencies in order to keep my loan payments where they need to be. With the fiscal incentives that the government has given, because they've increased the personal tax credit, I believe, I can eventually renew that currency and or examine other opportunities such as unit trust, such as maybe Reutering mutual funds, or even actual outright stocks that meet specific criteria that suit my risk profile. All of these things, and we could continue to talk ad infinitum, ad nauseum about the variations and the tangents that we can go off into. But Ivan, I hope that in some way, shape, or form, what I have shared puts some perspective, some context, some construct behind the need for not just financial education, but continuing and ongoing discussion around the topic of financial education. Because this is and will be the next burgeoning thing that our children need to understand. We are going into an era for which we, the adults, are only seeing the cusp and the beginning, the dawn. The young people who are coming behind us are going to be in full-fledged summer, so to speak, sunlight of all of the digital options that exist. But the basics of the financial education remain the same. Ensuring that that baton is passed on and passed on effectively is the key thing. And to do that, we ourselves must become products of that product and of that education. I yield the floor, Ivan.
I could not have said it better, sir. We have to be a product of the product. We must. And, we're going to launch something pretty soon regarding the children. And that is going to be totally awesome because we are moving on to the next generation. And maybe that generation will get their parents, they would light a fire under their parents and make them do things differently for whatever time they have left. But you touch on so many key points, so many key factors that it really, this whole episode will go on a lot longer than we anticipated, And Michelle wanted me to make mention of one particular thing, where Robert Kiyosaki says that they use other people's labor and force in order for them to accomplish certain things. And why can't we learn to do certain things like that? People will say, oh, that is not right, that is unfortunate, and so forth. But on the other end, you are the one that controls your destiny and your destination. It has to start somewhere. Some point in your life, you have to say, enough is enough. Take control and stop relying on a paycheck. Remember, you only have 12 paychecks every year. 120 paychecks within 10 years. Imagine this. And you want to have your dreams tied to that scenario. I think in essence what Dr. Ruja was trying to tell us, what Dr. Ruja was trying to give us an insight to, is that at this point in time, we could be, of course, have the lion's share in the new economy. And she was preparing us for that. Many of us are missing it. Many of us have missed it because we are at a point now where we're seeing that infamous Bitcoin reach over $52,000. And yes, people were, everybody was talking about it. So therefore, if Bitcoin reached 52,000, it is not inconceivable to picture Bitcoin reaching 100,000, 200,000, or 300,000. And if that be the case, then it is not inconceivable for one coin to reach maybe 500, 1,000, or any such matter, because at the end of it, we are seeing the new economy emerging. And I have one question for the audience and the panelists. Are you ready? I see that we have a question here from Noel Emmanuel Jack. You can unmute your mic, sir.
Hi, Ivan. Good night, and good night to all the panelists and the attendees on the call. Great initiative, Ivan. well articulated, consciously done, right? Now, I have a question. Now, we know right now that there's a storm in the United States, right, in Texas. And they said that, there are power outages, things have shut down, right? The power grid. And it's cold. And there's even, I don't know the figure, but they said people are dying, right? People have to burn their furnitures to get, warm, to get heat, okay? Let's liken, and let's paint in a scenario here. Let's liken the fire, right? The storm, sorry, as a financial crisis, okay? So we're likening the storm as a financial crisis, an international financial crisis, a local financial crisis, and I'm talking more about home here, right? With the Minister of Finance talking about, the bleak conditions of our economy, having to dip into the Heritage and Stabilization Fund. We are not seeing the mention of these oil refineries all over the world. There are so many oil refineries all over the world, and kind of insinuating as if things are dead, even with what we heard in the news today and so on, right? When you started the discussion, Robert Kiyosaki, in his presentation there's always this reference to the bank. See, you do your financial statements so that you can get money, borrow. Now, I believe that it can be done without the banks, right? And I believe some of you all will agree, but the tendency is always towards the bank. I want you all to ponder, maybe not right now, because I know the time is of the essence. Why is that like that? Why is there not a teaching to cause you to be independent of the banks? Even governments with the deficit spending and so on, throughout most countries are always indebted to the bank. Now, if we're talking about accounting, and we have professionals like Mr. Alvin Morton and Mr. Ivan Mark, we're talking about accounting. Has the government been doing a good accounting? Why is our financial system like this? What is the problem? And if we are in the midst of that raging storm, how much wood we have to light fire? How much furniture we have to light fire? Take a jab at this question. Thank you.
I think we pleaded fifth on that question, Noel. Both Alvin and myself know that it is better to kind of err on the side of caution with that, because we could go really, really deep with that question that you asked, Noel. The accounting for governments are a lot different than our normal institution accounting and so forth. That is all I'll say. But yes, and I mean, Alvin mentioned that we have been in deficit financing for the longest budget, for the longest while. And that is so. And it continues because, again, if you look at any of our budgets, there isn't a comprehensive plan to earn income. As said by the two videos of the presenters of the two videos, the income statement is very, very important, because that tells you, that paints a picture of your insolvency, the ability for you to continue. And really, money, income is like oxygen. It allows you to live and survive so many days forward. And many times we look at our own situation and we could only survive for the week. And that in itself is a telltale sign of the amount of life that you have. And I'm saying this for everyone, including myself, because literally it presents a picture of your survival. And we want to make that most relevant here in this session. We want to drive it home. And as our savings dwindle in this pandemic, we are putting ourselves in hot water, as you more or less want to allude to, Noel. We are putting ourselves in the fire. because we are not seeking new skills, we are not seeking new alternatives, we are not seeking, we're not taking the money that we have and reinvest it into things that will bring us income. And there are many things that is happening. We have to move away, of course, from the traditional and get into the non-traditional things that are emerging, and really do a deep dive into these things. Because remember last week, Jason mentioned many different, when he went through the whole list of that online farming, that strategy that he had about looking at companies' stocks and so on, and dissecting it and investing in different aspects, different institutions and so on, and different companies. He called it online farming. And it is a very, I think is a brilliant idea. And it only presents this opportunity for us to be involved in different things that are more or less relevant at this point in time. He talked about the batteries, he talked about lithium, getting involved and looking at lithium mining, because of course in South America, there are a lot of lithium fields, and you're looking at the Western countries trying to get inside of there, because electric cars and vehicles will need these things. Silver, these are things that will be needed in the new economy and the new revolution. So there are many things that are happening, and we have to move away from the traditional, let go a lot of it and move into this new dispensation. And of course, if you don't have the knowledge, then you don't stand a chance, right? If you have the knowledge and don't do anything, you still don't stand a chance, but at least you'll be better off than not having the knowledge. So with that, I would like to, I don't know if anyone else on the panel, I am so sorry that Mr. Shah can make it, but we'll make up for this session, of course, because we have other sessions more or less, because we could take each one of those aspects of the financial statement, go get involved in it, and you could see for yourself and make things clear what you look for when you invest in companies. So if anyone else, Muriel Azama, Wayne Wilson, or anyone wants to make a comment, please feel free.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, Maria.
There's so much that could be said, and we're at the top of the hour, so I will reserve a lot of what anything I want to produce for the next time we meet. Really, in terms of determining the financial health of a company from many perspectives, from whether it is analyzing for investment or from a perspective of making sure it aligns itself to a person who wants to work on their future, for many reasons. And I guess next time we'll talk about the fact that when we have to look at any company, we really, from a comparative, we have quick and dirty, we spoke about the 3 of the 4 particular areas that you could use to look at the health, which is your balance sheet, and your income statement, and of course your cash flow statement. And there are several, and Alvin mentioned some of them. There are several financial ratio analysis that one will use, really, as gross profit margin, and we could go into all those, probably about 10 of them. But what's important is to always do comparative analysis, because in terms of looking at the health of an organization, you want to look at it over a period of time. That's why a lot of times in companies, you have a RFP, a request for proposal. You need to have 3 years or so of financial statement, so one can determine the growth or not of a company. And these are some of the things that I guess we could go into another time, because that could take us down a rabbit hole, because as you said, this area is very vast. And really, in terms of tooling up people, there's a lot of information to process. There's a lot of information that we given. And I think that this segment will really need a few more weeks so that we could unpack a lot what has to be done. People wouldn't become experts, but you'll be aware. And when you have that knowledge that the OneAcademy shares, it helps you to at least be able to ask the right questions when you make an investment. Because if you're part of a company, you also need to know what the balance sheet, what the income statements, what is happening with the company. So you would know that you're tied or you're pegged to some organization that has some potential and wouldn't fall apart when things are happening. So that's just my take on the whole thing, and we will talk another time. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Muriel. Great observation and great point that because you are part of a particular company where you work, you also need to look at the balance sheets to see how secure your job is because you want a company that is solid, that will be here for the long run and really be stable. Okay, so with that, taking Muriel as our last comment, we thank you so much, panelists. We thank you, guests, for being a part of this OneAcademy tonight. And we do look forward, of course, for next week when we hopefully that Mr. Shaw or some other speaker will appear and give you the information that is relevant in this time. Okay, so with that, I say good night and I turn it back over to Lisa. Thank you so much. One's out.
Yes, well, that's left me with just a little bit to say, and that is thank you to all of the guests, once again, as Ivan said, to the participants, as well as those who would have given their insight into this world we called accounting, investments, and just general life financial practices that we as a community must ensure that we do on a daily basis to have our books in the plus and in the green and not in the red. So on that note, I want to thank all of you for being here tonight and wish you a pleasant evening. OneAcademy, we learn and earn. Thank you and good night.